Yo guys, what is up? Max here in Diablo 4 video, and today we're going over my level 50 to 75 Druid Pulverize guide. Now, this is going to be a guide that is meant to get you, once you're done into World Tier 3, to start blasting World Tier 3, unlock World Tier 4, and then get up to level 75. The reason that I'm positioning this as a 50 to 75 is because the way that I've been leveling has been using the Domhain tunnels, or the dopamine tunnels. These are still the best experience farm, and I'm gonna do them, or I did them up until level 75, where now I'm gonna transition into nightmare dungeons. However, my build for doing a normal dungeon is quite different than it's going to be set up for nightmare dungeons, because I'm going into more damage and less survivability because we're just fighting normal enemies, and this setup is specifically tuned to blast as fast as possible. So I hope you guys enjoy the guide. Let's get right into it. So the very first thing to understand about this build is how freaking strong Overpower is this season. I currently have a 833% damage increase when I overpower enemies, plus another 130% if I do it with a Werebear skill, which is Pulverize. Plus, if I hit a vulnerable enemy and I crit them, I've got another 100% crit damage. I've got 31 crit chance, which actually gets quite a bit higher. We've got over 50% crit chance on this build when our things are active. And I've already hit for 1,000,000 damage with just Pulverize. We hit like 1,000,000 at level 73 or 74. So we're dealing a ton of damage. But Overpower is no longer something that you want to ignore, and part of the build and the setup is to overpower as often as possible. Now, in order to achieve that, we need three things. The first is Obsidian Slam. Every 20th kill will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. This can be like every other Pulverize with the enemy density in the dopamine tunnels. So this is absolutely fantastic. It's going to give us our first source of Overpower. Our next source of Overpower is from Blood Boil. This reads every 30 seconds, your next skill is guaranteed to overpower, which is another source of nice Overpower. However, whenever our core skills overpower, which is all the time, we also drop all these volatile bloods, which cause more explosions around us. These are nice. They're a little bit of extra damage. They're not that important, but getting just another source of Overpower on top of everything is really nice. And then our last source of Overpower is simply from inherent Pulverize. Our next Pulverize will overpower every 12 seconds while you remain healthy. Those are our three sources of Overpower, plus we have our innate chance to overpower. And even though that doesn't sound like a lot, we'll get into a gameplay demonstration in just a second, and you'll see just how often I really am overpowering. Now let's get into my gear. Now obviously I'm only level 76. I'm still using non-sacred gear. My gear is okay. Mainly just look at what the aspects that I'm using, because they're all going to synergize very well. So to start us off, I've got the Sovereign Helm of Quicksand. This reads damage from Earth skills slows enemies hit by 25% for 5 seconds. We're using this once again because we are set up for mobbing. We're not bossing in domain tunnels, and I'm pairing that right now with the Crashdown aspect. Earth skills deal 68% more crit damage to crowd-controlled enemies, so all of my Pulverizes are Earth skills. They'll slow, and then I get a 68% damage increase against them when we crit, and once again, I'll show you why we get so much crit chance. Also, I got really lucky and got an Insatiable Fury. This now drops with up to 135% increased overpower damage, physical damage, armor while in Werebear, and damage reduction while fortified. Plus, we get +3 ranks to our Werebear skills. This is really, really nice. Obviously, if you can't get this, I would just go for a general damage reduction chest piece with possibly the power that gives you healing per close enemy, which is just extra healing, and you're going to deal more overpower damage based on your health. So that can be really nice. On my gloves, I've got overpower damage and ranks of Pulverize. I would love Earth skill damage and crit chance here, but I just don't have that. And then I've got the Pulverize is now also an Earth skill. This is a must-have aspect. The Ursa Horror, you're never going to want to take off this aspect because it's going to give us so much more utility with Pulverize. Then I've got on pants. I've got Werebear armor, damage reduction, killing an elite gives me more damage, plus the new Disobedience aspect, just the Codex version. That's going to give me a lot more armor, which is very nice. On my boots, I've got the Ballistic aspect. Looking for movement speed boots. I've got some Spirit cost reduction, but I do have when you have Fortify, your Earth skills gain +2 ranks. Currently, I am already at base 12 out of 5 into Pulverize, so that would give me +14 into Pulverize, which is gross. And then for your weapon, Real quick, this is Moxie from the future. I'm now level 92 on Druid, and I'm hitting for about 8 million Pulverize, and I will have my endgame guide. But one thing that I made a mistake on is in the previous recording, I recommended axes for the damage to healthy enemies and maces with the overpower damage implicit as the best in slot for the Pulverize guide, and I wanted to come back and correct that statement because I figured out something that's pretty broken for Pulverize, and that is using a staff. Now, a staff has the implicit 52% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Now, you may think, hey, that's maybe not as good as the overpower damage or the damage to healthy to help us one-shot enemies. However, all of these damage increases are additive. They are additive damage increases. However, the staff is actually a multiplicative damage increase. Now, the way that this works is it reads the stat 52% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. The reason this is multiplicative is because of our Paragon board. The Paragon node that's new, that's reworked, is Earth and Devastation. Our Earth skills deal 10% X multiplicative increased crit strike damage, increased by 20% multiplicative of our damage versus crowd controlled bonus, up to another 40% multiplicative increase. And so none of the other weapons, axes or maces, contribute to this multiplier. However, this just flat 52% damage to crowd controlled enemies, we get this damage increase, and we also get it again as a multiplicative increase for our crit damage. This jumped my damage up a ton because now with the changes to the damage formula, everything is additive, and getting those multipliers is really important. So I am currently looking for more damage to crowd controlled on my gear, but just note that damage to immobilized, damage to stunned, damage to slowed, all of those don't actually count for this stat. Only the specific words damage to crowd control add to this multiplicative damage increase, and so getting a flat 50% boost of that on our weapon is incredible. Now, one other thing that I want to point out is that I'm currently using the shockwave aspect on my weapon, creates a shockwave that travels forward, dealing 184% of its damage to targets in its path. This is obviously the best in slot place to put this aspect. However, while you're leveling 50 to 75, I recommend just putting this on a ring until you get a item that is like probably an 840 item power or above. You just don't really need Pulverize on your weapon. You're going to be changing your weapon pretty often. And so as soon as I got a pretty awesome staff that's 914, then I put on my best Pulverize aspect. But I just rocked the Pulverize Shockwave on my ring, and then I was using the crit damage with Earth skills on my weapon for the longest time. Also, one other thing to note, I will have my endgame guide out very soon, but I did kill Uber Duriel with a Pulverize build, which actually wasn't bad at all, and he dropped me this Banished Lord Talisman, which after you spend 300 of your primary resource, your next core skill is guaranteed to overpower. Your critical strikes that overpower deal 104% X increased damage. This thing is ridiculous. It's got more crit chance, more overpower damage, resource generation, plus 2 ranks of my core skills. Some of my Pulverize is now at plus 15 out of 5, and like, you can take Pulverize all the way to like the 100, do all the content with Pulverize. It is not the best boss killer, but it gets insane. And in the beginning of the video, I showed you that I had like 1000% increased damage with Overpower. I now have well over 2000% overpower damage. It's just getting better and better as I'm leveling with my 12k attack power. Until you get the Banished Lord Talisman, I strongly recommend looking for a amulet that looks a bit like this. You're mainly looking for spirit cost reduction, and then plus 2 ranks to a passive that's beneficial, and then slap that retaliation aspect for your core skills, deal more damage based on your amount of fortify. The best passives that you can find on an amulet, the resonance is going to be really good. Quick Shift is going to be really good, but my preferred ones are Crushing Earth and Stone Guard. These two are really, really great for Pulverize, but there's a lot of things that you can get. Plus into Nature's Reach is also pretty good as well. Then my rings, don't look at my stats because they're garbage. I just didn't want to swap out all the things because honestly resources are pretty tight right now, but I'm using the new Raw Might aspect. After you hit 15 enemies with your Werebear skills, your next Werebear skill will deal 46% more damage and stun enemies for 2 seconds. Note that this Hitting 15 enemies in the domain tunnels is the easiest thing in the world. We're doing this like every other Pulverize, basically, and it stuns everything that I'm hitting. And when we're using the Pulverize Shockwave, that is a ton of extra damage. And then lastly, I've got the Shockwave Ring. Pulverize creates a Shockwave that travels forward, dealing 92% of its damage to targets in the path, up to 100% damage. Now, obviously, in a perfect world, once I'm like more min-maxing, this aspect is going to go on my two-hander weapon. However, these aspects are relatively rare, and so just slapping it on a ring, or if you get a ring, and then you can just hold onto the ring, because you're going to want to constantly be changing your weapon. Not putting this on a weapon is going to save you a little bit of hassle, because obviously I'm only level 76, and I plan on changing my weapon a bunch more times. So this on a ring is still really good. The closer to 100 you can get it, the better. For our Spirit Boons, we've got Wariness, take 10% reduced damage from elites, Scythe Talons for more crit chance. I also grabbed Iron Feather for more max life. Once again, more max life gives us more overpower damage. You could also go for the Avian Wrath for the 30% more crit damage if you want. That's pretty nice as well. Then I've got Pack Leader. Crit chance, have a chance to reset the cooldowns of my companion skills, which is just nice to have more uptime of our Poison Creeper. And then I've got Obsidian Slam. Every 20th kill will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. If you didn't want to rely on Poison Creeper as much, you could go for the Calamity, extend the duration of our ultimate, but I actually kind of enjoy not being in my ultimate sometimes, which I'll get into when we get into our skill tree, but these are our boons. For the Vampiric Powers, I'm using Sanguine Brace. When I kill an enemy, I fortify for a percentage of my base life, plus I get 6% increased crit chance. This is always up. This is more crit chance source and more fortify, and we're dealing a lot of our damage based on our amount of fortify with our overpowers, plus our core skills are getting more damage from our fortify. So this is a really great pickup. To get that power, you actually need to go to the bounty board that you can find in the new Blood Harvest. When you go here, you're going to find like a little bounty board, and you need to get to level 4 on the bounty board to pick up that power if you're wondering where it is. Then I've also got the Blood Boil. We already talked about this. It's going to give me more overpowers and these explosions. I've got Domination. I deal 24% increased damage to enemies who are stunned, mobilized, frozen, or feared, and they're injured and not an elite. They're instantly killed. We are stunning, or we're immobilizing things basically all the time with our Poison Creeper, plus we're stunning things all the time with the Raw Might aspect that stuns enemies after I hit 15. I've also got the Undying. Casting skills heals you for 2.3% of your life. Double this bonus while below 50% life. I'm currently getting attacked. Goodbye. The thing that you could swap this out is for Hemomancy if you wanted to. Hemomancy gives us the ability to deal a percentage of our physical or our max life as physical damage to enemies, and then we get max life back. This is really nice as well. The only reason I'm not using this right now is because I am using an axe, and the axe has that damage to healthy enemies, and so I want that damage to be proccing on my Pulverize. So if you're not using an axe, I would use Hemomancy instead. But if you are using an axe, just I would honestly recommend Undying. It's pretty nice. And then I've got Anticipation for more cooldown of our ultimate. We do not care about the increased damage of our ultimate. And those are our Vampiric Powers. For my skill tree, I'm using Storm Strike with the Fierce Storm Strike to get vulnerable. We've got Wild Impulses, more core skill damage. We've got our Pulverize with the enemies deal reduced damage from Pulverize. You can, if you want, take Raging Pulverize for the stun on Overpower. But once again, after we hit 15 enemies, we're stunning them anyways. So them dealing less damage is quite nice. Then we've got Predatory Instinct for that more crit chance, and Iron Fur for more damage reduction. I'm still actually using Blood Owl. I thought at this point I'd be using Earthen Bulwark, but we don't really need Earthen Bulwark, and I really like the just quick button of the Blood Howl, gain a spirit and the heal, so I am diverting from my leveling guide a bit afterwards. I just never went into Earthen Bulwark. I don't think it's needed. I am grabbing Nature's Reach for increased damage to distant enemies. Remember, the distant enemies are basically anything that isn't in melee range, so this is fantastic for the Pulverized Shockwave. I did, once I got past World Tier 3 and I was into World Tier 4, I took points out of Poison Creeper because now, at this point in the game, Poison Creeper is not our main source of damage, where it kind of was leveling, but it is still an Immobilize, which is really important for our damage with the Domination, so we're absolutely keeping with that, but I changed to Brutal Poison Creeper for that 20% increased crit chance against enemies that I poison. This is like nice for if an enemy survives our Pulverize, but most of the time I'm not relying on this as much, and it's not up as often. So like I'll pop this if I need it, but because I'm not using that much as often, I am not currently using Envenom. I will be specking into Envenom later, but just right now I'm just not having enemies poisoned all that often, and they're dying instantly. So less reliance on Poison Creeper in my current setup. Got 1 point into Clarity just for a little bit more spirit when we go into human form. Trample giving us 40 spirit. Then I've got my 5 into Crushing Earth, Stone Guard, and 2 into Safeguard. We are fortifying a ridiculous amount all the time, always. And then we've got our Defiance. We're going to deal more damage to elites with our Nature Magic skills, which Pulverize is when we add the Earth tag scaling. Earth skills deal more damage to vulnerable enemies. Little bit of extra healing from our Circle of Life when we're casting those skills. Always heal whenever we cast Pulverize. And then Resonance. Resonance I really like just because we are still using our Storm Strike, and so when we're not in our ultimate form, we're not losing that much damage because we can Storm Strike, Pulverize, and that will get the Resonance damage increase plus the Quick Shift damage increase. And my like million damage Pulverizes that I'm seeing are actually when I'm pairing these two together, which is really, really nice. And then Grizzly Rage is going to give us another form of Unstoppable, and it will give us the Fortify, which is really nice. And I will usually cast Poison Creeper, and then while Poison Creeper is going into its like 18-second cooldown, I'll go into Grizzly Rage, slam things, and when this comes out of cooldown, or when I come out of Grizzly Rage, then Poison Creeper's back up, and I'm just kind of repeating that cycle. And then lastly, Ursine Horror for the additional damage while in our Werebear form, and increased max life, and increased overpower damage. This is just the best in slot for our like final key passive. And then lastly, for our Paragon board, once again, this Paragon board is specifically set up for domain tunnels. I'm not doing nightmare dungeons at the moment, so my like glyphs are basically useless for the most part. So I'm not prioritizing them. What I am prioritizing has been the ability to get spirit back, because I'm not using an Umbral Ring at the moment. So I rushed Ancestral Guidance for the after spending 75 spirit, we deal increased damage, and then I rushed getting spirit on kill and more spirit so that we can sustain our Pulverizes, and then I'm just grabbing as much damage increase as I can, more core skill damage, more core skill damage. I did grab some elemental resistances, more damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Earth and Devastation is giving me more crit chance with my Earth skills, more Earth skill damage. And I am planning on respecking this because you don't want Ancestral Guidance board as your starting middle board for like endgame, just because usually you just dip into this and take this little corner and then leave. However, because we are starting out and I need spirit, that's my #1 issue. These spirit on kills basically solve my spirit issues because we're killing so many enemies in the tunnels. And then Earth and Devastation, and this is just going to add to our damage. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Apologize that this was a bit rushed. I'm currently recording while live on stream, and also trying to level up and play the game. So I didn't really have as much time to like put effort into this video. So I do apologize about that, but I hope this gives you some guidance in what to do once you hit level 50 and some builds to go around. I will catch y'all in the next one. If you guys want to catch me live playing, I will always be live on twitch.tv/Moxie. We are trying to get up to level 100. I'll catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.